No, it is not deja vu, Pirate fans, or maybe it is, but the Pittsburgh Pirates lose again, losing another one to the Chicago Cubs once again, failing to get a run home and failing to get on the scoreboard as the Cubs win 7-0 in this game after a 9-0 win in game one of this series. So the Pirates trekking along once again with a very asleep offense. No matter what they get from the pitching mound, the offense certainly has been asleep in recent games. That even goes to a victory while getting no hit, but not the case here. The Cubs putting the runs home 9-0, now 7-0. This is your Pirates postgame show here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and, of course, Pittsburgh Baseball Now. I am your host, Mike Asti, and I will be joined by the Athletic Fantasies Michael Waterloo, who has been on this show before to talk some Buccos, talk this series, talk what's going on with this Pirates offense, even JT Brubaker on the mound, and then maybe try to make some sense to any of this. So, Michael, first off, I appreciate you bearing with us through this game and then joining us for this show. And we have to start with the obvious. And I told you before we started this show that we could have had the same program if we did this last night. And that really is the case in terms of, is there any hope for this offense to turn around and what has happened with this offense? Because regardless of the record, and, they're 5 or so games under 500, same as the Cubs who are now scoring, the offense actually was hitting for a while. The offense wasn't really the problem for a while, even though, of course, players like Bryan Reynolds, et cetera, that maybe you rely on were still struggling. But wow, they win a game while they're getting no hit. But let's be real, they still got no hit. And then 9-0 and 7-0 against this Cubs team, who's not exactly murderer's row. This isn't your 2016 Cubs team. What's happened, and is there hope to turn this around? I guess there's nowhere to go but up.
There's nowhere to go but up. The offense was asleep tonight again, but we're not. We're here ready to go.
That's true. That's true.
And it was brutal. We were kind of talking. It's just like, man, this was rough to watch. And I actually was kind of optimistic at first. You saw Bryan Reynolds, he came through with a big single in the first inning. You're like, okay, this could be the start of something. And then, that they had 3 straight hits to lead off the game. Then you had Dan Vogelbach with his first ever stand-up triple in his career. And it was like, okay, maybe something's going to get going tonight. And right. I tweeted out, Vogelbach was must-watch TV for 5 straight minutes there with the stand-up triple and then the confrontation at home with Wilson Contreras. I think this is just kind of, who the Pirates are. I saw, some people tweeting Freak Show Part 2, and it's just it's fun. It's fun to pull for the team. Expectations were very low for the Pirates coming in this year. Yeah. Everybody knew what it was. But I think whenever you're seeing Ke'Bryan Hayes get the rest days that he's getting, whenever you're seeing he's sitting, it's all right, well, where's the production going to come from on this offense? Is Rodolfo Castro going to do it? Is it going to be Michael Chavis? Is Josh Van Meter, who is he the worst leadoff guy in all of baseball? He might be. It's just when he's kind of your table setter, and you just he had a forgettable game, a strikeout, big ground out into a double play, and it's just whenever you see that, you're like, all right, night in, night out, what are you hoping for this offense? You're seeing offense down across the league in general with the ball, with the humidors. We're starting to see it spike up a little bit as the weather tracks up, but you're seeing record lows being set for Vegas and Sportsbook with the over-under games. You're seeing them come in around 6.5, 7 each game now. So you're expecting low offense, but that's even for teams with pretty good offenses. Whenever you're seeing the Pirates, you're hoping hey, maybe we can get 2-3 runs out. And when you see JT Brubaker, he was shoving tonight. And that's the kind of start that you need from your starting pitching. But in this case, the Pirates failed on two out of 3 ends of the ball. They're terrible defensively, terrible offensively. And I really don't know where this offense goes. Ke'Bryan Hayes, I'm very encouraged by him. The power's going to come. I have no doubt. He's hitting the ball extremely hard. It's hopefully O'Neal Cruz is up sooner rather than later, and that can kind of energize the team a little bit. But yeah, it's going to continue to be a long season for the Pirates. And, you're going to have the rare explosions. You're going to have the series where they take 2 out of 3 against the Los Angeles Dodgers. And then you're going to have the series like this where they're just shut out by the Cubs, which, again, like you said, they're not exactly murderer's row.
Yeah, Mike Asti here, Michael Waterloo from the Athletic Fantasy and Fantasy Pros, as the Pirates do get shut out again. This one's 7-0 to the Cubs. And to really paint this picture, since the Dodgers series, you mentioned the Dodgers series, and that included an 11-1 beatdown in that game. But like the weirdness of the earlier season series against the Cubs, the Pirates' 2 worst performances overall on the scoreboard, those football scores, they actually won those series. The Pirates did win 3 out of 4 against the Cubs, despite the 23 runs, and then, of course, beating the Dodgers in that series. So unlike the Pirates of the last couple years, they have been able to win some series against some good teams, and they have won a few series early on in the season. A couple years ago, the COVID year, it took a month to even get one series on the board just in general. So maybe there's some glass half full there. Maybe some people early on in the season were thinking, okay, this offense was at least producing. Hayes is finally getting it together for a full season, unlike what we've seen for a couple years due to injury. Even if this team's not going to go anywhere, of course, no one is predicting they're going to win the pennant. Maybe they would at least be fun to watch. Vogelbach, very popular in Pittsburgh for reasons that are on and off the baseball diamond, but at least they'd be fun to watch. You're going to watch a guy go maybe mash a ball and go to Permanis after the game and be happy about that. And maybe you'll get an okay start from JT every now and then. But, man, it's been brutal to watch the last couple of weeks since that Dodgers series. Any momentum they had is totally gone. And since that Dodgers series, so you're looking at, I believe, 6 games right now, they have a combined 6 runs. Overall, in all of the games, they wouldn't have beat the Cubs on this night, as that last dinger solidifies the Cubs with a 7-0 win in this game, 7 runs. The Pirates only 6 in those 6 games. Just insane. And if you take away the victory there, and they have 2 of them in that span, but both against the Reds, and no team has business winning a game when you're getting no hit. So you wouldn't have done that against anyone but the Reds. You got to feel bad for the Reds pitching staff. That shows you what wins are. And they do get a W there, but then, boy, it lingers on to this game. So it is getting really, really bad. Michael, though, you mentioned about Van Meter maybe being the worst leadoff hitter. Number one, before we get into the other star that we haven't mentioned, because Hayes didn't play in this game and he has been hitting this year, so you can't really blame this on him to this point. But we'll get to that other star who, once again, hasn't been hitting in a moment. Van Meter, yeah, he's a leadoff in this game. He's not been performing 169 as an average. It's rough for a leadoff hitter, and he has been relatively playing every day recently. But Gamma was a leadoff hitter as recent as a few weeks ago. In fact, in that Dodgers series, some of the series wins, Gamma was leading off games. Vogelbach led off games to start the season, as weird as that sounded for a guy with 31 homers in a season a few years ago to be leading off. Do you tinker the lineup again? What's your favorite lineup? It's been different with obviously right versus left-handed pitchers, but it feels like that no matter who's on the mound, this lineup's not going to get it done, and Van Meter should be done leading off. Is there any chance of somebody else leading off, or is this just going to stay the course?
I think you can't really leave Van Meter in that spot. If you're looking, you're talking about scoring 6 runs in the past 6 games. The Pirates coming into today are tied with those aforementioned Cincinnati Reds with a negative 65 run differential, which is the worst in all of baseball. So if you're looking at that, you're like, okay, Our table setter here is Josh Van Meter. We have 6 runs in the past 6 games. Who can we throw out there? Okay, we can put Gamble back out there. We can put Vogelbach out there. Hey, Michael Chavis, you want a shot? Okay, yeah, let's bet you lead off. How about you, Rodolfo? Like, at this point, just keep trying something, because this lineup here is not working. No. I think, since you asked kind of like who my go-to person would be, I think it'd be Gamble. I mean, he's, his batted ball profile is pretty good. He had the 346 OBP at the top of the at the top of the lineup, and that's super valuable. So I don't see why you don't go back to him and stick him there. He's at worst double the player that Van Meter is. And at best, he's a respectable leadoff hitter to get on base. That's what you want. You don't really care about the batting average, he still has the 272 average, and his expected numbers are kind of like backing that up. But
and even
you
if
want
you do
that on
care,
base.
it's way better than man meter. Say you do care, it's
Yes.
way better than man meter still. Yeah,
100%. And like you just cannot. The city of Pittsburgh is already tired. They're already just waiting. They're like, hey, we know what this year is. Show us something. Show us you're at least trying. Get us to buy into your plan and show us that 2023, right. 2024 is the year there. Like, that's not with Josh Van Meter. And even if you're trying to increase his trade value, I hate to tell you, he's going to be cut before the trade deadline even gets here. So, like, Ben Gamble's your answer there. Daniel Vogelbach is your answer. I think those are your two best bets to hit leadoff, especially to get somebody on base for when Bryan Reynolds does come.
Yeah, and there you go. That's a nice segue. You've done this before. Yeah. And when you also look at Vogelbach, I admit, even in a new modern day of baseball, and of course, understanding analytics and things like that, seeing him as a leadoff guy is just weird. It's still hard to get used to. And it's not even just his size and the funniness of that. If you're looking at a few years ago, and overall in his career, he's kind of been that on-base guy. He's been a weird for what he looks like. He hasn't been kind of the stereotype, but he does have a stereotypical year with the Mariners with the 30-plus bombs, 90-plus RBI, and a 200-some average. He basically had a Matt Stairs year, as I like to call it. That doesn't appear to be a guy who ever put that year up to ever be leading off. Imagine telling a Mariners fan 3 years later he would lead off in the NL. I don't think anyone would have bought it. So that's still weird, but overall, that certainly produced more than Van Meter right now. To segue, though, as you gave me the segue, obviously Hayes has been better than he's been the last couple of years. There's tons of hype. He's going to be there long term. He's the face of the franchise. Bryan Reynolds, though, is that argument, whether or not he is the Robin to Hayes' Batman, whether or not he will be there long term. The 2-year quote-unquote extension doesn't really mean he's there long term. Maybe he still could get traded. But if you're going to trade him, if that is the thought process, because it still could possibly be, his value certainly isn't maybe what it would have been even before the season. He started off slow, as he always does. He picked it up again. In fact, last time we did one of these post-game shows right before the Penguins got going in the playoffs, it was where Reynolds had picked it up, and there was no reason to even wonder. Kind of got pushback when I asked what was going to go on with Reynolds and if he was slumping. But he's back to slumping again. The average is barely over 200. He ends up being 1 for 4 in this game, so he does get a hit. What's your concern factor on Bryan Reynolds, and how much does he now have pressure to hit individually? Regardless of what this team does record-wise or what Hayes does, he's been hot and cold. He had a real bad year, a real good year. So far, it's been rough.
Yeah, it has, and that's why, whenever there were the conversations about, oh, maybe Bryan Reynolds will get traded, and like there was, there's always a segmentation of Twitter or a fan group like where you love your guys, and it's just like we overvalue people on our team no matter what it is. That's just like one of the big things in life, one of the philosophies, like we endowment effect, I think it's called. So you see that with Bryan Reynolds too, like people floating in trade talks and this like LOL, no, like for the Marlins, unless we're getting Julio Rodriguez and Noel Marte or Emerson Hancock, he's not going to go. I'm like, well, then Bryan Reynolds is going to stay around because he's not going to fetch that. He's a very good player, I think, but like he isn't that superstar. And I think, you talked about the good year, bad year, good year, bad year, and we're kind of seeing that. So, for baseball, you like to use the 3-year rolling average. It's kind of hard to do that because 2020 was 60 games and you can't really take that full sample there. So, for Bryan Reynolds, you kind of have to extrapolate everything, add back out to 2019. And whenever you see these hot, cold, to me, that just tells me he's somewhere in between that player. And like, I look at that with Colton Wong. He's the perfect person who's like alternates every year. And it's just like, what that tells me is this is a really good player. He's not a great player. He's not a superstar. He's not somebody you build around. He's somebody you want on your team. I don't know if he's going to be the Robin to Batman, but he may be like the Q to James Bond or somebody like that. Like he's still involved there. But you have to be concerned. You have to be concerned whenever you look at his metrics. Everything is down. Launch angle is down. The hard hit rate extremely down. The ground ball rate up. Topping balls left and right. And what is kind of telling me is he is pressing a lot. His chase rate is up. His chase contact is down. And what that usually means is somebody is really, really pressing a lot. And with Bryan Reynolds, he's looking at he won't say this. He's looking at the teammates he has around him in the lineup, and he knows the onus that's being put upon him that like, okay, like it's me and Bryan. It's us. Like we have these other guys, but like I'm the person who needs to take this on. So I think there's a lot of pressing going on right now with Reynolds. And, you know, we're just seeing the changes in the swing. We're seeing the changes, you know, with the quality or lack thereof of contact with him. So I still think there's time for him to turn it around, but like it's only a quarter of the way through the season. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And it's usually by June 1st is when I really start to get concerned. And that's where I kind of tie in my fantasy analysis a little bit. Like this is the point where I'm like, okay, we have a lot of data. 50 batted balls where you're really able to kind of evaluate what a player is doing. And we're seeing that for almost everybody in the league. So this is where you start evaluating. A couple more weeks is really when it's like, okay, this is the key moment. So I still think seeing Reynolds pick it up a couple weeks ago was encouraging. And I think we're going to see that those ebbs and flows all year. But by the end of the year, I think we're going to be pretty satisfied with what we see with Reynolds.
I would imagine, and it's not like he's a bad player or anyone's going to think he's going to be a bad player, but you do mention that when you have the hot and cold seasons and people are arguing whether or not you're a Robin or someone's Batman in baseball, if the Pirates are going to think that's you for the future and you're going to be that for the Pirates, because Ben Cherington has been evaluating these individuals and not really appearing sold on anybody but Hayes for maybe good reason, you're going to have the concern. And you mentioned June 1st. That is kind of a benchmark. You figure out kind of what teams are going to be, what players are going to be. But by the way, it's May 17th. We're not too far away. This isn't like this is April 17th. You know, we got another weekend and a half here, a couple weeks to go. They don't have many days off with this truncated season here because of the late start. But maybe not having many, you're giving Hayes so many days off here. He's resting almost a game per series. I don't know if there's a consideration. You're mentioning you feel Reynolds is pressing. You're looking at all these numbers being down. Even when he was hot 4 weeks ago, the overall is still well down, factoring that in. So maybe do you think about giving him a day off? Or do you think about moving him down in the order? Obviously, that'll hurt the team, but does it help get him going? Because maybe this year is more about him individually, whether he's being showcased or part of the future than this team contending, even though no one wants to hear that. You do something with Reynolds, or you just stay the course as the number 2 guy because you do have a year body of work where he could get it done there. And you have no other options, I guess.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if you move him down the lineup, I don't really know what that does. Like, who's going to move up? I could see him maybe going down to like 6th or something like that. But I think the most likely route there is that he gets a day or 2 off. I could see it being like a Saturday, Sunday type thing. He sits a Saturday night game, sits a Sunday morning. If they have an off day Monday or a getaway day, whatever it may be, I can just see him doing that a few times. That's typically the route we see managers take, especially with one of the team's better players like Reynolds. But if that continues, you know, once the Pirates, you know, call up O'Neal Cruz, once we see a few other moves happen here or there, if we have
kind of why June's a big deal.
Yeah. Right. That's really kind of the big time. So I could see, you know, if he continues to have these struggles and just like he's like you said, it would hurt the team, but right now he's not helping your team. I mean, and you expect him to, because who else is going to do it? As much as we like Ben Gamble, we talk about him hitting leadoff, we still all expect like Bryan Reynolds to be the better player. Like we expect him to be the first or second best hitter in this lineup. So I think it starts with a couple off days for him, and then just kind of letting him get right, do a little extra cage work, and just kind of get back to what made him the player that we have seen flashes of for 2019, 2021. Because if you're going to, you know, if you want to go that way, you can say, well, you know, his successes have been a lot more than his struggles so far, because the struggles came in 2020, 60 games, in 2022, 40 games. So that's a 100-game sample, and we're working with a larger sample, 2021, 2019. So if you want to sit him a couple games, I'm all for it. I don't think it's at that point yet. Hopefully him getting that single today will kind of start moving him in the right direction again. But by the end of the week, I don't think it's out of the question to see him sit a couple games.
Yeah, and he was able to be under the radar, of course, with the Penguins in the midst of the playoffs, and even the Steelers having the draft, and Pickett being aboard and now getting into rookie minicamp. And then you're going to have a little bit of a lull before the Steelers obviously go to training camp. The Penguins have been eliminated. The better or worse, college teams aren't yet going. The Pirates are now kind of front and center in terms of Pittsburgh media, so maybe it will add more pressure, which maybe is a negative, but you get to June for O'Neal Cruz and many, and a lot of decisions to be made, but it's usually a benchmark nonetheless. So there's a concern factor, but obviously he's put a body work together that it's not like the sky is fully falling, and you don't have many other options either. And if you're going to be treating Hayes with kid gloves, you kind of got to throw Reynolds out there, and I'm sure he wants to play too. Michael Waterloo joining me here on our Pirates post-game show here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Subscribe, comment. We'll hit you up here after the show and reply back. And also, of course, head over to Pittsburgh Baseball Now for our game recap and where this show and our coverage will live. Now, we got to go to the mound because the offense has been asleep at the wheel. So it's almost made the mound irrelevant, but they were able to win a game despite being no hit recently, as you mentioned. JT Brubaker takes the hill, little over 5 innings. Able to get strikeouts going there, does allow 4 runs, which actually is the most runs he's allowed in a start since early April. So overall, that might not be what you want, but he's that guy that if you don't have an ace on this staff, obviously, you don't even really have a 1 or 2 on a good team in Major League Baseball. But if you're going to have a de facto one, it has been him. You're looking at here, yeah, 4 earned runs off 6 hits, but does have a 10 Ks from this game, which is more than he normally puts out in, say, 4 or 5 starts, which is normally what he gets in a start. How would you evaluate this start for JT, and even in comparison to how he's been overall? Because you could argue this start is a bit of an anomaly stat-wise to his seasonal starts with way less Ks, but way less runs allowed. This start runs up, Ks up, around the same situation innings-wise for JT Brubaker.
To me, this is my favorite start of his all season. And I know it's weird whenever you see the earned runs and you see the line and everything, but if you look, his home run to Jonathan Villar that he allowed, Wrigley's the only stadium that home run would have been out on. So that's kind of some bad luck there. Like it's every other ballpark, it wouldn't have been a home run. So you look at that, and then you look at the miscues in the 4th inning with Rodolfo Castro throwing a ball away, allowing a run to get on first base. And then you have that pop-up to Michael Chavis that he just dropped and missed. And then you have Yoshi Tsutsugo, a ground ball at first base that he couldn't handle. Then you had the review on the double play. So, like, I realized that, there were 6 runs, 4 earned, but there's a lot of stuff that builds to those. That Villar home run is the first thing that stands out to me. And then whenever you're seeing, these guys, just the mistakes and the extra runners there, as a pitcher, that gets to you. There's that mental aspect of the game where you're pressing even more to kind of get out of there. So it's kind of tough to see that. But as you mentioned, the strikeouts, he had 10 strikeouts. I know that's the season high. I believe it's a career high for him too. And what's more, he generated 19 whiffs and he had a 37 CSW, which is just phenomenal for him. An average, you're looking at like about 31 to 32 for a big league pitcher. So seeing that 37 is great. And he used his slider 43% of the time. And having that slider, it's up in velocity this start compared to every other start this year for him. And you're seeing slider usage go up across the league in general. And even for him, you've seen his usage kind of creep up over the past few games. So this was a fantastic start for him. The numbers may not show it overall with the earned runs that he allowed, but overall, just watching the performance, he was absolutely shoving on the mound. And it's definitely a kind of a wasted start. I think he did way more than enough to keep his team. Even if you want to count the home run, you want to count a couple of the other earned runs. Okay, fine. He did enough to keep his team in the game, and they just could not come through at all.
To say the least. Yeah. And I think maybe to put it simply, in this start in comparison to the others, what maybe you could try to like and put lipstick on a pig, maybe some would argue because of the earned runs, he was more aggressive and it appeared like maybe he had more command of the at-bats and more command of the game. And that does include allowing home runs. But yeah, there were different things that were maybe happening that weren't all his fault. And yeah, you allow 4 earned runs. It's not great, but that's about average for most pitchers out of baseball these days in 5 innings. And that's the 4 that are against him. And then you have 4 earned run and 10 strikeouts. I feel like most teams would take that from a guy like him, who, to be fair, really probably shouldn't be expected to be your quote unquote stopper race if he was on a good team. You maybe put him as a number 3 starter in Major League Baseball, maybe for a rotation. He allows 4 runs and 5 1/4, gives you quality starts, strikeouts anywhere from 6 to 10. There's nothing to really be mad about from him. So that's kind of what he's been doing here. But of course, the Ks way up. So that is a bit of an oddity there. Before we just quickly go into the final game of this series and just ask you if the Pirates are going to freaking score a run, let alone try to win the game. Just out of nowhere here, I do have a chatter here, one of our favorite subscribers. He's all over our channel, generally speaking here, David Gormley, who does throw at you, Michael. I know you mentioned Pirates being tied with the Reds for the worst run differential in Major League Baseball. I don't know if it's changed here after the game, and obviously I can't fact check while hosting this, but he said that he determines the Pirates are now negative 72 and now the worst in Major League Baseball. So I don't know if that has happened after this game or what. I mean, obviously it's bad either way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that commenter is actually correct. The numbers I gave were kind of heading into tonight's game.
Gotcha.
So yeah. After that, he is 100% correct. So I thought I'd give the Pirates a little bit of credit there, just making them tied for the worst. But he is absolutely correct. They are the worst now after tonight's showing.
Yeah, and 7-0, of course, 65 plus 7. You're getting 72. I don't know what the Reds did, but yeah, it's not looking good for the Pirates, of course, there. Michael Waterloo from Athletic Fantasy and Fantasy Pros. Just to recap things here, obviously this has been bad. Game 1 was bad, 9-0, 7-0. You have Mitch Keller taking the hill. It seems like most of the time when we do these shows, it usually is a Mitch Keller start. So it's a rare one that it's not a Mitch Keller start, but he does start tomorrow. What do you want to see from him? What kind of lineup would you, if you're the manager, if you're Derek Shelton, and it's not an easy job being him, put together? We talked about that briefly already, but he has tinkered lineups in the middle of series, especially games back-to-back. Will that happen? Should that happen? And just thoughts on yes or no, will this team score a run in game 3 of the series?
I will go out on a huge limb and say they will score a run tomorrow. Okay. However, I don't know if we're going to see Mitch Keller tomorrow. It sounded like pre-game that Shelton wasn't kind of committed to Keller starting tomorrow. So I think there's a chance that we don't see them. But on the
I could see that. Yeah, you're looking at 0-5 and a 6+ ERA. Wouldn't be shocking if he does miss one. Yeah.
I wish I could pull up where Roansy Contreras is as far as rest and as far as everything like that goes. But I think the most likely scenario, if you're not going to see Keller, you're probably going to see some type of bullpen game tomorrow. But they're facing Drew Smiley, who I believe this is maybe his second or third time against the Pirates this year alone. But yeah, I don't think Drew Smiley is a good pitcher. I don't think the Pirates are a good offense. So I guess it's the movable force against the stoppable object tomorrow, and we'll kind of see
on two starts. By the way, he does have a shutout though in 5 innings against the Pirates back on April 12th, and then on the 22nd allowed 4 runs off 6 hits and 5. So 2 completely different starts, one bad and one really good.
Yeah, and I don't think that Drew Smiley's that good of a pitcher. I really don't. I know there was a little hype around him last year. I didn't get it. Didn't really understand it. We have a large enough sample against him. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who the Pirates run out there tomorrow against the lefty. But I don't know if I want to bet that they win. I don't know who's going to be on the mound. That kind of plays a big part. But see Brian Hayes back out and on the field tomorrow is going to make a difference for them. So I'm going to say they'll score at least 2 runs tomorrow.
Okay,
at least 2 runs.
Might have to get some prop bets going here. The over-under is on that. I feel like that's a generous over-under on 2 runs to the Pirates. Maybe, right now it should really be over-under 1, but maybe realistically over-under 2. And maybe you're pushing. Maybe it's going to be a push. But in terms of getting enough to beat the Cubs or really anyone who's not the Reds, it seems like that's tough sledding these days. Michael, I definitely appreciate the time. We'll have to have you back. It was a lot of fun here, regardless of what happened on the field for the Pirates. And maybe we'll get you back on one of these when the offense actually shows up and wakes up. Since we're staying up to do this, they could at least maybe score a run or 2 and actually show up to that game themselves. But Michael Waterloo from the Athletic Fantasy and also Fantasy Pros. Again, hit that subscribe button bottom of this video here to catch all of these post-game shows. Right now, all we got is the Pirates. Not our fault. That's a situation around us here in the region and beyond. And also, of course, hit up Pittsburgh Baseball Now and at PGH Baseball Now on Twitter for the game coverage and the seasonal coverage of this team, and also the archive coverage of shows like this.